Welcome back to the Parade Lap and a new season of Formula One.
Yay.
Yay! Finally, the wait is over. 2026 has started. The cars are all different. Another team on the grid. And we're here finally to talk about the first race.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was surprising. I guess because you said like everything's new. The teams, your previous expectations about who was going to be the front runners or whatever have all changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of learnings, right? Everybody was kind of learning. And I think we'll probably unpack that as we go into our podium. Probably the beginning was more exciting than the rest of the
I agree.
race.
Yep.
But yeah, that's how I felt. What about you? And also, I guess Sophie, how did it feel? Because this was the previous two Melbourne races. You were there in
Yeah.
person. So what was
Yeah.
it like, I guess, watching it and not being there?
Not as fun. Nowhere near as fun. No, I wish I was there. Yeah, it kind of sucked not being trackside for this one, but it was still good. I'm still very excited that the season started. Just lots of stuff to get stuck into. So yeah, it was different, very different. Can't say I watched this one live because I'll probably watch the rest of the season live, every session. So I thought I'd sit this one out and watch the highlights, but today I rewatched the full race. It was, I think the first 20 laps were interesting. And then the 20 after that was sort of like, okay, we can wrap this up soon. And then I had to click pause and go back for the final 20. How many laps were there? 50, 56. So
58 or 50, yeah.
58, yeah. So I'd say my attention span kind of like tapped out at about lap
Mm,
47, once they got into a groove of not as much happening. It was good though. Like they were still passing. The retirements were quite a big factor, but they also weren't too chaotic. They sort of just happened and it was natural to what was happening. So it was interesting, but yeah, I'm excited to see how the teams progress during the rest of the season because, yeah, like you said, it's just a blank slate, which is really exciting because there's some teams I'm hoping are going to climb up the order a bit. Lots to look forward to, including our first podium of the new season. So, would you like to kick us off with your P3?
I know, how exciting. Okay, so my P3 is the Aussie curse strikes again for like the
Mm-hmm.
same people. So in a way, my P3 was about Oscar Piastri and Isaac Hadjar. So, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, last year we were talking about both of them. It wasn't as bad for Piastri, but I mean it was pretty bad. He was doing really well and then he spun off and then I think he managed to get a point or something, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't great for him. And this year he didn't even start the race. What?
No.
I missed the like beginning bit of the race because I was like
Mm-hmm.
asleep and I started watching, I don't know, maybe close to lap 20. So I saw that Piastri was out, but then I went back to see what happened and he hadn't even started the formation lap and I couldn't believe that
Yeah.
he just like hit the curb and then his car, it just looked like it was in, I don't know, like a video game or something, or it didn't look real that's what happened. So I was
Yeah.
devastated for him. And then also Hadjar. Like I thought Hadjar did so well in
Mm-hmm.
qualifying. He qualified P3, right? Yeah, P3,
Yes.
amazing. Did better than
Mm-hmm.
Max. Like,
Yeah.
and people were like, "Oh my gosh,
Quite
he's
drastically.
yeah, he's shaken off a second driver curse. Like, he did
Yeah.
so well. And I was so excited for him because of what happened last year, where he went out on the formation lap, right? He didn't start
Mm-hmm.
his first race as a rookie. And then he had to retire the car. Like, I felt so bad for him. So yeah, it's just strange that it kind of, this like curse struck again, and it was sort of the two of them who ended up having
Yeah.
a really bad race again.
That was my P3 as well. I wrote Oscar's home race curse continues. Yeah, just awful because at least last time he got to do a bit of racing and then it was sort of a big thing where he went off and then he was like, "Ooh," came back. Yeah, so very disappointing. Also, he had really cool merch and there were so many people. There was a Piastri grandstand and everyone had like the OP hats and the t-shirts on, but They were sad about it. I saw a brilliant TikTok of a guy. He must have been in that grandstand and he had a McLaren cap and then he like spun it around. You could see the track behind him and he took the McLaren hat off and then had a Mercedes one. Then there was just some lady like cackling in the background because he did kind of what everyone was sort of thinking. Yeah, just disappointing for Oscar. And then it also happened to Bottas. He kind of counts as an Australian. He just like stopped, didn't he? He stopped in a very considerate place. I thought when I watched it, thinking, oh, pulling off the track was good by pit lane, but then it was actually really bad,
Yeah.
because it completely mucked up Ferrari's opportunity to go for a pit under VSC. So yeah, it's an interesting race when so many people don't start or they DNF during it. But I guess that was expected for the start of the season. New regulations, everyone's kind of figuring out if they've clocked it or not with the design of the car. So some of them seem to be struggling, which is kind of cool to see because then we'll see what happens from there. You'll see the rate of development, which will be really interesting. So yeah, sucks for Oscar that he is yet to have a good result at home. And they always bring up the stat that no Australian driver has ever finished on the podium, sort of thinking, surely that he will be the one to do it. But we'll have to wait another year for that, which is very disappointing. But
Oh, I was gonna say, because actually I heard them in the post-race interviews or even before that, like people were predicting they weren't expecting very many cars to f actually finish the race. Some of the people were saying they thought like maybe 12 cars would finish the race or something, So
mm,
like they really thought that there would be a lot of retirements and not that many drivers finishing for the first one.
which is so strange to see on the timing screen. Number one, to have 22 drivers on the screen is quite a lot. But then to have them all grayed out at the bottom, it was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But it meant that people who were at the back were further up in terms of position, so it kind
Yeah.
of balances out.
Okay, so we were pretty in sync on podium to start off the year
Mm-hmm.
with our P3s. My P2, I thought Lindblad did really well. So Arvid Lindblad, I don't know much about him. I think because he's like the only rookie. I think last year we just had
Mm-hmm.
so many rookies, so there was all this focus on like the rookies. But this
Yeah.
year, obviously, you've got like a new team like Perez and Bottas back for Cadillac, but they're like old, so we know them already.
Yeah.
But I didn't do any sort of research or looking into Lindblad at all. And then I thought he did so well. So I was really pleased for him because I didn't realize he was so young. He's only 18.
Yeah.
Um,
Scary.
Amazing. So, I mean, there was quite a big
Mm,
fuss about Kimmy also when Kimmy joined, right? And Kimmy was also 18 last year.
yes.
So yeah, I just thought he did really well in like the free practice session, not just so free practice, then for qualifying, and then the race itself, to get
Mm-hmm.
those points for VCARB. He had like a nice overtaking kind of battle with Ollie, like Ollie Behrman at one point, and
Mm-hmm.
he was good. Like, he went
Mm-hmm.
at it, and then Ollie went at it, and obviously it's his first race, and I thought that that already showed like, that he wasn't sort of scared to back like or was going to back down or something. He was actually just going to go for it. And then I didn't realize that he was also like half Indian, which is really interesting. And I saw something on Instagram that someone shared with like his grandmother, his nani, like doing like a very traditional like Indian prayer for him, like, before he raced. And
That's cool.
if you're from like Indian heritage, that is so universal is to have like older or grandparents or something doing something like that before something important. And it just kind of reminded me also why like representation matters. And it's so interesting to have people from different backgrounds. Because I would never expect to see something like that on like VCarb's Insta
Mm.
account. It's so it seems so out of place, and yet it was just really quite cool. So yeah, I was surprised and like pleasantly surprised by him, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I was really impressed by him. I've written down that he was quite aggressive, but in a really good way. Like he just wasn't afraid, and I really, really like his sort of manner in interviews and stuff afterwards. Like he's just really well spoken and level-headed. Yeah, I think he's be very good, and I feel like VCarb is a really good team for him. And it was really cool that Oliver Rowland, the Formula E world champion from last season. He's his manager, and he was there watching in the garage. So that was very cool. Um,
Oh, I didn't
and that's been
realize
like a
that.
big,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's been a big talking point about the battery component in the Formula One cars now that energy management is a big part of the racing strategy. So Formula E drivers are quite like involved in sim practice and stuff now because there's a lot to learn from them. So Arvid is very, very lucky that he has like a world champion to ask questions for anything related to energy. So that's really cool to see that he is sort of using that. My P2 was that the race start was chaos. I've watched it a few times from quite a few different angles, and I still don't know what really happened. So it was, they have to rev for quite a long time, which is different from last season. So it's quite loud. And then they had different battery levels. Like George and Kimmy said they started with zero battery because then the battery regenerates under braking and like during the race. And then Charles said he started with 20% battery. I don't really understand that. So there's more to learn about this because how do you forget to charge your battery before like the race? So I'd like to know a little bit more about the battery levels. The new graphics are quite interesting that you can see the battery levels and like when drivers are in overtake mode and things like that, which is the new DRS. Yeah, but the race start was just, it was like there was two races starting in one go, but there was a delay for the back of the
Yeah.
pack. Or even maybe the delay was from the front ones that they just didn't launch very quickly.
Yeah.
They did, but they didn't. Almost, it was just kind of weird. But yeah, the first pack moved. Charles had a fantastic start. Arvid had a very, very good start. Then, like, there was another start in the back of the pack. And there's so many cars now that, there's lots of people involved. Did you see the moment of Franco dodging Liam?
That's
That was amazing, like
that's
incredible.
that's exactly what I was thinking right now. I was about to say to you,
Yeah.
did you it was Liam, right, who looked like he'd stalled basically, and Franco had to
Yes.
like basically just like it was like split seconds, right? He
Yeah.
just had to like gap in there and like come out. Otherwise he was gonna go into the wall or directly into
Yeah.
Liam. Yeah.
That was scary because you could see if you watch on like Franco's on board that there's another car in front of him. I can't think of who that is now. So already he's, has to dodge that car. And then once that car's moved, Liam's just sitting there, but he really just appears. And this is all like in a split second,
Yeah.
like quicker than anything we could sort of comprehend. Yeah, amazing. So it was quite cool to see him do something that cool. I loved George's reaction of
In
the moment in the cool down room,
in the
and
I
then
was
they like shared it on their stories, which was quite cute because we
oh
haven't really seen them interact.
my P1 was actually going to be exactly the same thing. It was going to be lap one, basically the start of the race and then that, but I changed it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just thought it was. I had to I rewatched that because I didn't watch that live. And I actually thought a lot of the retirements and people who were out were because of that first lap. But like you said,
Mm,
it was actually stuff that had happened before or whatever. So it was chaos,
yeah,
but there weren't as many crashes from it as maybe you would have thought. But yeah, I thought my P1 was basically Ferrari and versus Mercedes, right? And that's what was happening in that first lap and then at the start, and then it continued at least for like the first like 20 laps or before the virtual safety car came and all the pit stops happened and Ferrari
yeah,
strategy. But it was amazing to kind of watch like Charles go from fourth, just lunging forward and sort of attacking
mm,
Mercedes, catching them off guard in a way and going ahead. And then Lewis also there, so it was kind of like the two Ferraris sort of hunting down Russell. But Kimi had a horrible start, so he went back, I think maybe to seventh or something. So he really fell back. The others had good starts, but it was such a mix. It was such a mixed bag. And then I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Charles, but he said it was sort of a bit like cheeky, the person who was doing the
yeah,
lights to because the red lights flashed on and then they flashed off instantly, like it was straight
yeah,
away. So he was saying like for the first start when they're still getting used to stuff and it happened so fast that they had to like react, that was just a bit, maybe that caught some people off guard. But it still doesn't explain what you were saying about the battery situation and how the Mercedes were complaining about the fact that they didn't have any battery.
mm.
but it was cool to see the Ferraris attacking. I started
Yes.
watching when
Lewis
I
loved it.
I put on my, I was watching, I put it on in the morning because I woke up
Hmm.
randomly and I was like, oh, I'm like, I haven't missed that much. And it was Charles and Lewis 1-2 leading the race. And I was like, what is happening? This is amazing. Yeah, I didn't expect them to be challenging the Mercedes, especially after qualifying, because I think in qualifying,
Mm.
they just did so well. They seemed like they were so far ahead. So I didn't realize that the start would be as dramatic. And then it kept sort of like cat and mouse, right? So Russell then went ahead, and then Charles went ahead, and it kept swapping positions, I think, for like the first 9 laps. I wasn't expecting that to happen. I thought maybe, once Russell went ahead, that would be it. But he was able to sort of keep pace. Um, so yeah, I thought that was a really interesting battle, and I'm also looking forward to see what happens for the rest of the season with the two of them, whether Mercedes actually has a lot more power and they're just going to be dominant, or whether Ferrari is going to be able to actually challenge them a bit more.
Yeah, it's quite nice seeing the two of them in the mix, the two teams, because that's traditionally what it was a few years ago, and then McLaren took over. McLaren sort of had like not a fun time, it seemed. Like Lando was just there, just in the mix, but not at the front. Yeah, I'm quite excited for Mercedes. I've written George for World Drivers Champion, question mark. He is the pick for the season. Lando was the pick last season and it came true. And then for George to come in to the start of the season and win the first one with his teammate P2, that's a pretty good start. I'm excited to see what he does during the season. I think as well, if you were the pick for whatever it is, like the odds, the betting odds or something, if you were going in knowing that so many people think I'm going to be the man this season, you would feel that way. Like it would be quite a confidence boost. But I'm rooting for George. I think that would be quite cool. I haven't quite figured out who my predictions are for the season, so
Yeah.
we'll have to do that maybe next time to have a proper think about it. But George, I'm interested to see if he can keep it up and like who will be the other contenders as part of it because I'd like to see lots of different race winners.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it seems like Mercedes have the advantage.
I mean, I agree. 'Cause people have been whispering about George like before this started, right? So they were saying, people
Yeah.
knew that something was up with Mercedes, that they were sandbagging, and that
Mm-hmm.
therefore George probably had the best chance of being world champion. I don't know if you saw
Mm-hmm.
that interview with Carlos where they asked him for who does he think is going to be world
Yeah.
champion, and he says, "I'll give you two names," and it was George and it was Max, and then they said, "Can we ask why?" And he was like, "No," so he just gave those two names, which seems like it could be there. It's really interesting though because I'm actually seeing a lot of like hate, hate towards Mercedes and George already, like from this first race about them being
Mm-hmm.
dominant and it's going to be so boring and now it's just going to be
Mercedes
them.
dominance will bore
Full
fans
ball fans, and
again.
then again, and then also it being George, like, oh no, like
Mm,
you're not George. And it's really interesting because it was a very similar thing that happened with McLaren and also Lando, with fans and people just like hating. And I actually saw a
yeah.
meme where it was like F1 fans moving from Lando and McLaren and hating on them to moving on to
Yeah.
Mercedes and
Yeah.
George. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it could be. And I guess if it is George, I just think it would be cool because it would be a new world champion, a different
Yeah.
and the thing is also, remember last year we kept saying like George was in the mix. Like he ended up, I think,
Absolutely.
for the beginning or first half of the year, he was like coming out third. He was on the podium really unexpectedly. Like he would just sneak up, and we were laughing at him because
Hmm.
it was just like, look, and then there's George. Just he somehow
Yeah.
manages to get a podium. But he was doing well. Like even last year, with the Mercedes not being like a really great car, he managed to still
Mm,
get on, get podiums. Obviously, he's very talented. People are also talking about Charles Leclerc, and about how, especially from the beginning bit of
mm,
this race in Oz, like just how good he is at his like race craft, basically, and the fact that
yeah.
he is actually a very good driver, and if he just had a better car, he would be able to compete. Yeah, I feel like fans may be like rooting for Charles again, anti-George in a way, as
Yeah.
like the hero and the villain here, or underdog to try and get it.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting if George is the guy this season. Who is the George going to be? Last season, like you said, he just would pop up and he'd be there. Who's going to be that person if he's the one on top?
Also, we didn't really get to see Max, right? Because he wasn't
No.
he came from the back. But if Max had a better
Yeah.
qualifying session, we don't know where he would have been. And then if he had started
Yeah.
from P3, I don't know what he would have been able to do. So that's also interesting, I
Yeah.
think, for the next race, just to see what happens with Max.
Yeah, he was quite busy. He had a lot of ground to make up. He got driver of the day, which was quite cool.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting on the commentary. I think he was predicted to get up to like P8 from starting P20, and he was up to P6 because like Oscar was out, which wouldn't have been forecasted. It took him 17 laps to do what he was supposed to do over the course of the whole Grand Prix. So
Okay.
he is the man. um, yeah, so I think Max will be a factor. And if Hedger, although he retired, he was doing really well. So if Hedger in the second seat is going to be a solid teammate for Max, like that's going to make a world of difference because he hasn't had that since like Perez kind of started. So that will be interesting. So maybe it'll be George versus Max and it'll be this big like toxic thing.
Yeah, remember when they
Yeah.
had like beef? Like, I don't know which race
Yeah.
it was, but there was like all the stuff about George and Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around like summer break last season.
I mean, so those are our podiums. I'm just going to say I guess one other point that I had, which I just thought was really interesting, was Aston treating it like a test. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it was just random to see them like out, like cars retired. And then
Yeah.
suddenly it's like they've come back to life and, like Alonso's back on track after a
Yeah.
while, right at, just testing and doing stuff. So I just thought that was funny and that was quite interesting that they were just like, yep, this isn't race one. This is just our testing for us.
Yeah, I liked in free practice one when it was like showing what all the garages are doing, and then there was just Alonso just in the garage, and he looked like he was just playing games on his phone. um, he's just waiting for his car to be ready so he could have his turn, and yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's
was
it.
quite funny. Yeah, I think their season is going to be maybe a struggle, but
Yeah.
then maybe next year they'll be like top of the pile. So
Yeah, we don't know.
wouldn't count them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit just like of what they were doing, like working in tech. So I work in tech and it's almost like you put out a product that like isn't really ready yet because you just want
Mm,
customers to give you feedback on it so that you can like debug it and then you keep iterating to get the
hmm
right version out as fast as you can, but you know that it's bad, but you got to start testing it to do stuff. And it was just really interesting kind of watching them, especially Aston Martin and some of the other teams kind of approaching it like that. They
hmm
were just like, yep, this is what we have, and we're going to have to learn as much as we can to fix it and then
mm.
and iterate it. So it's sort of like that mindset that they're taking to these cars and the season.
My meme of the week was during qualifying, where Toto really confidently looked at the camera and everyone's just making things of like, when you know you've done it right. Yeah, yeah, love it. Love it.
We are in
Um,
sync. That is my meme too.
yeah. I saw it popped up on TikTok and like when he had his big thing on Drive to Survive with Christian Horner, it was like,
Mm.
fix your
Your
car.
car.
And then someone commented like with that photo and said, he's fixed the
Fix
car.
it.
Yeah, yeah. But
That's
you could tell like all of Mercedes thinks that way because the way George was talking on this thing of like, yeah, it's been a while, we're back here.
Yeah.
They know they've cracked it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's quite funny seeing the poker face.
Same exact thing. I had that meme. I don't know like which version of you have. I have the one where obviously it's the same as that kid that has the burning house behind
Hmm.
her. But yeah, it was just like, oh my God, you could just tell that he was so pleased. And
Yeah.
also the fact that they'd been like sandbagging and then, in qualifying they just went so much further ahead than everybody else. I wonder, I guess how they'll do, well, I guess in the next race, which is China.
Oh, China is an interesting one because it's a cool track, but it's also just like a lot of straights. Apart from that, really, is it the right-hander where it's like basically a spiral? Apart from that, it's a lot of long straights. So hopefully something exciting happens. I'd say turn one will probably be a factor because if it's a start like we had, and then a turn one that's as dramatic as at the Shanghai circuit, it will be probably like a fingers crossed that nothing bad happens kind of moment. I'm looking forward to China. I hope it's a good race. It's the first sprint weekend for the season. So it would be very nice to have two different winners. It would be cool. Maybe if it's going to be Mercedes Ferrari, Lewis might be the sprint king again. He can win the sprint race and then maybe Kimi will win the Grand Prix or something. Or a completely different team. I think Hadjar's got a few wins in him this season. That's one of my predictions.
Oh,
Maybe
wins.
he'll
Oh,
win China.
not
Hmm.
even podiums. I'm hoping for a Lewis
Podiums, yeah, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that Lewis gets a podium in China, not a sprint one, like a proper one. So
nice,
let's
nice.
see. I just think that will also just give him like a lot more confidence because, I think this
Hmm.
is the longest he's been without a podium.
Yeah,
I think maybe
ever.
in his whole career. Yeah, like
I
something
think so.
obviously with a new team.
Maybe.
So, yeah, I really feel he needs it. Um, I don't know if he'll do much more with it like for the rest of the season, but I really hope he just gets like one podium and maybe it's going to be China.